Lunch is served. Kaimei's husband also works in the factory. He is a purchasing agent. Rui's daughter-in-law works in the factory's shipping department. In the 1970s and 80s, people were able to buy a few electrical appliances. Zhang Guifang tells us that their two-story concrete house was built in 1988, the same year they purchased this washing machine. This air conditioner was purchased in 1994. That year, about 30% of the villagers had a VCR. And several years before that, almost everyone here had bought a color television set. In the 21st century, consumer technology races forward.
More families have DVD and VCD machines than VCRs. In fact, in China, it is difficult to find VCRs to play videotapes.
In many places, cell phones have leapfrogged landlines.
In Chinese, the cell phone is called a big brother's talk machine. It's sort of like an indicator of your economical well-being and your social status.
In 2003, 12% of urban Chinese families owned a personal computer, and many more connect to the internet through public cafes. Although rural life changes more slowly, farmers too find new leisure.
They change from 3 crops a year to just 1 crop a year. When they compare their living standard today with what they had, life on the farm is much easier today than 20 or 30 years ago.
In
our village, there isn't anyone who is really poor. Almost everyone lives in the same kind of house. The reason for this is simple. It's the factory. Everyone works in the factory and has an income. 3 or 4 members, or even 7 members of a family, work in the factory. With everyone working, you can accomplish great things like building a house.
The family as a whole earns the equivalent of $1,200 a year. Farming income represents only a small fraction of the whole. Meat and fish are plentiful on the market today. Rising incomes have fostered a lively free market in Sijia. Despite the rising incomes, the garment factory is growing so fast today that the village can no longer supply all its workers. Almost 20% of employees have come here from neighboring Anhui province, just to the west. Everyone works very hard, but migrants have few amenities.
As more foreign capital flows into the area, more labor is needed than can be supplied locally. Also, as the population increases, there's an increasing need for services for the new residents. More people create the need for businesses, which in turn attracts even more people. This cycle will be repeated over and over, resulting in rapid urbanization. While this process is especially noticeable near Hong Kong, I believe that we will see the same thing happening in the vicinity of Nanjing and across southern Jiangsu province.
Like many places in the coastal region, Sijia is rapidly urbanizing. And yet, an old restriction slows this transition. Although Kaimei and her family work in the garment factory, they are officially registered as farmers. In China, one is born either rural or urban. Residency is based on home location and is difficult to change. So migrants from other rural areas may move to Sijia to work in the factory. But 80% of China is rural, with perhaps 150 million unemployed, more than the entire U.S. workforce. Yet no one may move legally to any cities like Guangzhou. So millions move illegally to find better jobs and schools. Transportation, housing, Human services and public health would become even larger problems for the government. Dense cities like Guangzhou were fertile grounds for the spread of severe acute respiratory syndrome, or SARS.
If they eliminate this residence requirement, they are not in a position to accommodate such a huge flow of people from the rural area to the cities.
So towns like Sijia remain officially rural, but recent changes here help break down disparities between urban and rural China. Agriculture here is now joined by light industry, blurring the old distinctions. Even township enterprises attract migrants from less developed regions to the west, just widening the gap between the booming coast and the less developed interior.